So I'm going to dive in here, but I think it would be proper to have you do a little bit of an introduction of yourself and then also your company New, because when we were talking offline, we said we didn't want to spend a lot of time talking on your company and doing a sales pitch, even though it's a sales event. We wanted to go into more of your experience as someone building and working in sales. So I'll just hand it over to you to start there. So just intro yourself and tell us what New is.
Great. So, hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Mark Walker. I'm the CEO of New, which is just N-U-E. And we're a Bay Area startup. Very strangely, almost entirely controlled by Canadians. So most of our major investors are Canadian. I'm a Canadian. I've been in the Toronto tech scene for a long time. And so what New does is it's modern quote to cash, order to cash, self-service to cash, agentic to cash. And think of it like if Salesforce CPQ and Zora, the subscription billing platform, had a baby, HubSpot was the midwife, and OpenAI was, I don't know, the obstetrician or something. It's very, very powerful. And our claim to fame is that basically most of the major AI companies you've probably heard of, including OpenAI and Anthropic and Glean and Jasper and Legora and Sierra and obviously Cursor, lots of them are running our software. And that's an amazing experience for a Series A startup to have billions and billions of dollars running through our systems.
What was the initial, I guess, idea for you when you were building this? And did it evolve from, I guess, your original idea to kind of what you have today?
Well, it actually wasn't my idea. So this incredible woman named Tina Kung, who worked at Steelbrick, which became Salesforce CPQ, and worked at Zora, and worked at Oracle, and worked at a bunch of companies. She actually was working on a different problem with actually the former CTO of Zora. And then she said, no, there's a bigger problem. The pace of change of how you sell things and how you price things is going up incredibly. And if all these systems are disconnected, that's going to be a big problem. So she created it. And then she came to me through one of her investors, and they said, we'd like you to be the CEO. And I said, sorry, why aren't you the CEO? The last thing a talented woman needs is, right? And then we became friends, and that's how we got this company started. But her vision was, she had the vision, and she had the most crazy-ass go-to-market plan that we are still executing.
What about prior to joining as CEO? And I probably should have phrased the question, how did the idea evolve, even after you joined? But what were you doing within the space before? How did you, get there?
So I came to being a tech CEO the traditional way. You do 2 biology degrees, and then you go in the music business. You get a law degree.
I thought you were going to say consultant,
yeah,
which
no,
a lot of people are
consultants. So basically randomly, but starting in, I was a lawyer, I was a federal court litigator. I got to go fight the first internet litigation, which was over Napster and all of that. That was super fun. Met David Clark, who invented IP protocol, which was super interesting. Then decided I wanted to build. I just wanted to no longer be just arguing about stuff. I wanted to create stuff. Built my first startup, which failed, and even worse, it failed slowly. It did okay, and then just didn't break out. Entered the NetSuite ecosystems. A bunch of people here for the NetSuite ecosystem. Entered that ecosystem at basically the exactly right time and made piss pots of money. And then came in. Rogers asked me to run a company for them. Did that, and then with a bunch of other people from the Toronto community, launched a company called StrongPoint, originally called FlowDocs, but eventually StrongPoint, which we sold to TA right in the middle of the pandemic. Fun part of that story is I've never met anybody involved in that transaction, ever. Not even my own lawyers. It's pretty wild.
I just want to go back to, I think it's important to also just highlight learnings you said it failed, and I know that's a tough word to use as entrepreneurs and as builders, but what was something really valuable you learned from perhaps that failure that has really carried you through to this point? I think that's important to highlight.
Don't over-index on one powerful partner. So we had a very, very powerful distribution relationship, making almost the opposite mistake to what people make with partners. We had this credible relationship with CA, and then one day we came to the office and found out that Sanjay Kumar, the CEO of CA, Computer Associates, had been arrested for having 37-day months every month for a long time. And when he got fired, everybody that we knew actually within about 2 weeks also got fired as the company restructured and refocused. And our business, we way overcommitted to one channel. So never do that again.
So I want to get into, again, a room full of sales leaders, sales folks here. So I really want to kind of hone in on just advice and expertise that you would have for those in this room that are looking to get like guidance on perhaps like how things have changed in sales? So first question for you, just in your perspective, again, like super lengthy career, as a startup founder, like you've done selling, like you know how to do that from a startup perspective and also from like enterprise level. So what is the difference between startup sales and then doing something that's larger, like an enterprise level sales?
I think increasingly less. So at the beginning of a startup, you really have to sell yourself. You have to sell yourself, your team. You have to sell a feeling of trust that you have an insight into the customer's problem that may be unique. In fact, it better be unique. And that you will be so ridiculously overcommitted to making this successful that the customer, going back to the emotional side that Ben was talking about, that the customer should overcome their very rational fear. Like, God bless the first people who buy enterprise software from a startup. Their very rational fear that you're going to blow up and die and their career is going to go with it because you're going to be so fanatically devoted to them as people that they will buy. Well, I think in enterprise sales today, if you're not actually bringing that to the table, you're going to lose in enterprise sales today now anyway, because what you thought, well, Ben would say what people thought they were doing was wrong always. It's definitely wrong now, right? So if you're not bringing that commitment, that's really what you're selling, is the commitment.
Another thing I found really interesting that we spoke about like prior to this when we were just chatting was you were talking about how like, customers today and also salespeople, AI can be a blessing and a curse, and it's been mentioned many times, with people using it to either inform themselves but also sometimes misinforming themselves as well. So what advice would you give to a salesperson in the age of AI that, you know, customers are coming to the table already pretty well prepared? Like how would they sort of have an edge?
So, you know, we're selling against Salesforce and other very large companies. And so every one of our customers, we're selling mostly, you know, $100,000, $300,000, $500,000, $1 million deals, right? Every single person we're talking to, either right before they talk to us or right after they talk to us, is either directly or indirectly going to a large language model and finding out information about us. The direct version is actually going to ChatGPT and saying, what can you tell me about New? What can you tell me about what are the advantages of New over Salesforce Revenue Cloud or over Deal Hub or whatever competitor they're comparing us to. And the amazing thing is ChatGPT, particularly ChatGPT 5 now, has access to everything everybody ever said on Reddit about you. Right? It's everything on G2 and everything, and it better have access to all your technical documentation, and your marketing team had better understand that they're actually marketing to ChatGPT and Gemini, not actually to actual human beings, right? And so what that means is then they will form an impression of your company. They either had one or will form one very, very rapidly in a way that's extremely difficult to change, right? So your job as a salesperson is to actually understand why the hell are they still talking to you? Well, the reason they're talking to you is they're trying to find out if there's a reason why they shouldn't buy your software. It's not actually to try to find out if they should buy your software. They've already made a decision that they might buy your software. Like they're probably already there, right? And so you really got to face that psychological problem of, they want to find out if they shouldn't, so you should probably engage with them around that issue right away. And that makes for a very interesting conversation.
I think that's also very comforting at the end of the day too, because it's going back to the idea that like, and Ben mentioned this too, it's like selling is still very human, and that can't necessarily be replaced how we might think it will be. Just quickly, I want to ask the crowd, how many here are part of a startup, building a startup, smaller startup? Just raise your hand so we can get a good sense. So again, probably not a lot of sales resources or even a large sales team. So what would you recommend to those folks that are working for or building a smaller startup? Like how do they, really pack a punch when it comes to sales when they don't have the same resources that an enterprise scale company would have?
Well, the enterprise sales company, going back to Ben's point, is actually fighting at a disadvantage, right? Because they are impersonal. Because of they're structured, because they have very, very tight controls on what they're allowed to promise and who they're allowed to promise to. So we were talking about this earlier. As a startup, I would recommend that you look at, first of all, never enter a market where there isn't already an incumbent, unless you happen to be OpenAI. Unless you happen to be completely category originating, always understand that there's always an incumbent. And then look at the market and try to find the place where the incumbent is weakest. So I'll give you a good example. So New comes out into the market, and there's about 7,000 customers who are customers of Salesforce CPQ, and then of course there's all the companies that are in tech that aren't Salesforce using Salesforce CPQ. Our target market, our micro niche that we focused on, was just the major AI companies. Like, we didn't accidentally get OpenAI, Anthropic, Lean, Jasper. We didn't accidentally get them. We micro-focused because our competition would not be in an advantage state in that situation, that we could understand their business better, that we could move faster, and more to the point, we could promise them that we would adapt our software faster than Salesforce could adapt their software. So we turned our size and inexperience into our number one strength. Now, we were also massively transparently truthful, which is something else large companies are not good at, right? So just take your, what's it called, jiu-jitsu, right? Take your weakness and use it as a strength.
What do you mean by transparently truthful? Like, is this the education you're sharing with sales teams, or is it how you're telling sales teams or your sales folks to approach, like, customer sales? Like, what do you mean by that?
So I mean both things, right? So going back to this idea, what your customer most wants to find out is if there's going to be a bad decision that's going to get them fired. Like, let's presume that that's really what the conversation is about. So why don't start the conversation by acknowledging that adopting your software is going to involve a significant change, and that's going to involve them doing something on top of their day job, and ask them to find out what is so important that they would want to go through that, right? And then say, okay, we've got all these amazing customers, or we're doing this great team, or whatever your advantage is. But because we're a small company, there's some situations where we're not going to be the right choice for you. Can I walk you through those and make sure, before we start telling you all the reasons you should buy, can I make sure that I use your time efficiently and talk about maybe some of the reasons where, if it's true for you, you probably shouldn't buy? Well, imagine you're on the emotional side of that side. Going back, I loved your speech, by the way. I love your presentation. Going back, imagine you're on the other side of that, and you're like, hell yeah. Actually, I know we say fuck yeah, but yeah, like hell yeah.
You can swear.
That's what the person actually was in the call for right away, and you're having that conversation right away. There's no way in hell that anybody at Salesforce or your big competitor is going to be allowed to have that conversation, right? We used that against, when I was running SkyTech back in 2004 with a bunch of people competing in the NetSuite space, we used that against NetSuite's own sales team to beat NetSuite's sales team, and we made millions, right? Okay,
I want to go into now like the building side and building a sales team, and even just from your experience with startups and including now, like building a great sales teams. I've heard a lot of sales folks say it's difficult sometimes, or founders in general say it's like there's not necessarily incentives that you can give right away to a salesperson or a sales team. What would be, in your opinion, other than like the typical sales incentive, something that you could suggest to those that, they want to build like really strong quality teams, but of course they want their teams to feel like they're part of the structure and the building of the startup? Like, what would be, just off the top of your head, a great incentive for someone to share?
The number one incentive to get any talented person to join the startup is you. That's the number one thing that you are offering them access to. You, your vision, your team, your mission, the adventure. It's like, what possible incentive could you have to give somebody to climb Everest with no oxygen? Because that's what being in a startup is like, right? And don't complain about it. It's like it's like complaining about the snow at the top of Everest. Like, you knew it was there. You stepped over bodies to get there. You want to find people where that journey is the incentive, right? Now, if they're going to go on that journey with you, and they're your very first salespeople, or the very first salesperson in a company, that's a foundational hire. People always treat engineers and marketers and maybe, I don't know, even their CFO, and their CFO gets stock options and stuff like this. Our first AE is the sixth or seventh highest stock owning employee, the number 2 after the chief engineer or one of the chief engineers outside the C stack. Like, he has a ridiculous amount of options in our company and deserves every single one of them.
I love that answer. Mission is really important, and I think it's also finding the right people that are going to believe and be on the journey with you. Who here right now is currently building a sales team or hiring salespeople? A few of you. So what advice do you have for these folks? Like, what should they be looking for when they're hiring salespeople?
Are you founders? No? So who's, and what's your role? Pardon me? Your sales head, okay. So, and so it's some founders, right? So, the number one mistake I think that I see people trying to do is hiring salespeople who are not prepared. You know, they say, oh, the problem of getting from founder-led sales to sales-led sales. Yeah, no, it's not a problem. You just hired the wrong people, right? The problem is that the founder has to do the entire job. They're the sales engineer, they're the marketing team, they're the salesperson, obviously. They're even probably booking the transaction and babysitting the customer's kids. Or as I said earlier in the conversation, having the customer's kids tied up with barbed wire in the basement. But they are doing everything that's necessary to win. You need to hire people who are prepared to do that. So what we did deliberately is we told the people that we were hiring there would be no sales engineering. We've got basically fuck all marketing. We have no resources for you. You're gonna have to do everything yourself, right? Or we're all gonna have to do everything ourselves. And guess what we got? People for whom that was their happy place, right? People who wanted that load. Now, they're getting kind of tired of it now. We've got all those resources now behind us, but now we're a much larger company. We have 142 people. There's lots of people who are expert at doing those pieces that support the sales team, and now we're hiring different people with different skills. They're also amazing people, but they're not the same people as the first 3 or 4 reps, right?
One final question for you, because I want to open it up for the crowd to ask you a few. But you've answered a lot about building a sales team, and you've shared a lot of really great nuggets of information around just what makes a really great salesperson. If there was one last takeaway that you could share for modern sellers today, something that every modern seller should have, what should it be?
Humanity, right? You are not, like, what you are bringing to the conversation is your emotional range, going back to Ben. Everything's all about Ben. But your emotional range, I'll give you an example. So we have a very, very, very large software company that is almost at the end of a sales cycle, and they turned around to our team and said, hang on, wait a second. We're like 1,000 times bigger than you, right? How do we know that you're sufficiently well capitalized to survive that, like to be a good partner for us? Well, there's literally no good answer to that question. Like, that is literally an unanswerable question, because in the greater scheme of things, except for the fact that our software is so damn good, they should not actually buy our software, right? So what they're really trying to ask for is an emotional reason why they did it. And so when I get on the call to support my rep, I basically go, I know you want to know this, and I know you want to see our financials, and I know you want all this, but that doesn't really answer your question, does it? What you want to know is, how well backed am I for the future, and what is going on inside this company that would make it safe for you to recommend this, right? And the person goes, right. And I go, okay, great. I'm going to tell you all of that. And at the end of it, they're like, we have no more questions. We don't want to see your financials. We don't want to say that, because I was basically saying, when you asked my financials, you weren't really asking that, were you? We were really asking, tell me about what's going to happen. Tell me a story about your future that I can tell to my team and not get fired, right? Right? And so your humanity, in every situation, your humanity is in fact quite possibly the only thing you are bringing to the sales process. Right?
I love that. I think that's a great spot to leave it. Yeah, round of applause. That's awesome. Thank you. So we'll take a few questions. Phoenix will just run the mic.
Hey again, Mark. So I was earlier chatting with Mark and I couldn't recognize him because of the whole Clark Kent and Superman thing going on. As I promised, I had this question for you when you were on the stage because I wanted everyone else to hear it too. I struggle a bit with passion and habit. Like if I'm passionate about something, I can't turn it into habit. But if I'm habitual, it can't become passion. So if you were to turn your passion into hobby, how would you do it? And if it's possible to turn a habit into passion, have you done it before?
I think that's a really good question, right? Because the interesting thing is that all the best salespeople, in fact, I would say actually all the best everything, are habitually structured in what they do. They're not like flailing in this deal, I'm doing this thing, and in this deal, I'm doing that thing. But I think that think of this. There are people for whom yoga is a practice every day, right? They're not bored by it, they're engaged with it. It is a habit that they are passionate about. So the part of the sales process I'm passionate about is the customer. It's freaking amazing. Like, there's companies, I once had a customer that just made the leather pads that go on the inside of flutes. And that was of course, there must be somebody who does that, right? They're the world leader in doing that, and they have $1 million instruments shipped out from all over the world. Fucking fascinating, right? Every single company you will ever deal with is that fascinating, right? And so be passionate about the people and make a habit about being passionate about them. And then and then structure what you do to express that passion in terms of quality and sequence and reliability, and you'll end up with an overall great answer that you get up out of every day going, thank God I get to do this. Yeah? Good question, though.
Mark, thanks for your fantastic presentation. Two quick questions. Firstly, what's your company culture of your company, and how would you spread it to every employee of your company? Second one, which is the moment of truth that you realize your product achieve product market fit and you decide to scale up?
Okay, those are two good questions. So New, more than any company I've ever been at, actually does live a culture. The culture is to have compassion for our customers because, like I said, God bless the first people who buy the first of enterprise software. Be compassionate for our team. What we do is fucking hard. Like, we're building another NetSuite kind of level of complexity. And so everybody in the company works really, really hard. Like, when somebody actually was hiring somebody, or not hiring somebody, they said, I'm not going to hire them. I said, why? I just don't think they're prepared to give 200%. Just think what it's like to work with people who are giving 200% all the time, and then you kind of don't do 200% of your job. And the last one is be brilliantly new. In other words, if you're going to do something, do it amazingly, right? And we live that, and we talk about it, and we work really hard at doing that. In the terms of the aha customer product fit, it was actually the moment I met Tina, and she explained the problem to me because I'd spent 30 years in SaaS. And I was like, hell yeah, I couldn't even get teams of people to do that properly, right? And so it was a bit unusual because Tina had a hell of a time between like ideation and when I met her. And frankly, a hell of a time since then too. She's an amazing person, and she delivered an amazing amount of intuition. But for each company, it's quite different. In my last company, it was when we were in a room and somebody said, yeah, I like your pitch, but I have a bleeding neck wound over here, and we realized we were building the wrong product, and we went and built the right product, right?
Nice. That was amazing. Thank you so much. All of the answers were like wicked sharp and super practical, and I'm just so happy that I came because of this, actually, so thank you.
Thank you.
I want to combine like a few things that you mentioned. Like, you have this sort of humanity-oriented thesis around selling, and then also this idea that the transition from founder-led sales to team-led sales is about hiring the wrong people. You have to hire people who can survive Everest without the oxygen or whatever. And I think like one thing that I've asked myself a million times is, what's the balance on, that humanity-led sales thing is like a relatively unique idea, and you have to implant it into people's brains somehow. And then I struggle with the balance between like, when do you just let someone go who sucks, or invest more in the coaching and training? When you see what I'm saying, kind of?
Yeah, humanity-led sales doesn't mean tolerant or flexible or pushover sales. Like, so we've hired people and fired them like really fast. Like maybe one person individual like didn't even make it to like second month because he just literally was clearly just not able to connect with people in a way that we would demand, and also he was totally ineffective because of that, right? But I don't think it's that hard. I think people treat sales like it's not like everything else in the world. It is like everything else in the world. Like, you don't think engineers have to be human and actually have to really relate to their peers in order to both imagine the problem that the customer is going to have and build a solution? You know, everybody is actually at their best when they're being most human, right? Sure, yeah. Go for it. No, that seems too callous. It's more like hire for people, challenge people to express what you want in the interview process by telling them it's going to be worse than it will actually be. It's a pretty good way of filtering. And then, like for example, somebody engaged with me and they said, "Hey, Mark, you know, I'm this type of I won't say this who they were, but I'm this type of developer and this thing, and I was wondering if you have jobs in my space." Pretty good step to reach out to the CEO and ask them directly. Bonus points, right? And I said, "Yes, actually, so and so in our company is the person who's hiring for that." And they said, "Great, could you give me their email?" And I just basically screenshot it on LinkedIn and sent it to my COO and go, "That was the fastest job interview fail in history. Like, I just told you who it is and that we're hiring, and you couldn't actually figure out how to get to the person." So that's like, it's this combination of being very, very focused on what people are good at, and then just really going, "Sorry, if you're not at our speed, you're just not, no, just no." Right.
And one more.
Okay, nice start. So I hear you saying a lot about, being passionate about what you're doing, and, Tina brought intuition that was unique. And as we know, everything's about bend, so I'm curious, when building a business like this, what part of your decision-making is emotion versus rational?
That's a really good question. So when you're asking about the emotional thing, so joining Tina on this journey was the thing I was thinking about when you asked that question. So I'll bring it all back to Ben again. It was totally emotional. It was like my wife didn't want me to do it. I don't need a job. She didn't want me to have a job. The dog doesn't want me to have a job, right? But I was so emotionally attached to Tina's journey and her belief and her vision and frankly her complete audaciousness about what she was going to, like we're taking a run at Salesforce as a chess move. Like we're going to wipe out CPQ as a concept as we go through this. And that was her plan. And so it was a very emotional thing about, I just want to be, and I'm very glad I did it, on this journey with this incredible person and the team we're going to build, and it's its own reward. Does that answer your question? Yeah?
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Round of applause. Thanks, Mark.
That was awesome. Thank you, Mark.